All right, welcome back into Farzcast. I am very excited for this guest. If you guys know him, you know him. If you don't know him, you're going to know him in just a moment. You're definitely going to want to check out his past content. He's done a lot of crazy things on the internet. And we're going to talk about that and everything else in between. Joining me right now, Jared McMullin's former host of Friday Night Cranks and is it accurate to say former host of Late Night Web Show?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. We'll say that. But Jared McMullin here with me on Farzcast. What's going on, man?
Not much. I never thought of it that way, so I'm glad glad you brought it up.
I want to get into Friday Night Cranks in a moment because
yes.
I mean that was just insane. You did that for ever, basically.
Yeah.
But have you been? How's the insanity of 2020 treating you?
It's been relatively fine, I guess. I mean, I live in Myrtle Beach, and they're not. I don't know. People are just silly here. But I don't know. We've just been kind of hanging out at the house, just really going to the stores, maybe every week, every other week. I order most of my stuff from Amazon anyway. So not much has changed on that end. We just can't go anywhere. I've been hanging out, finding some random hobbies to keep me busy, I guess, just like everybody else. And I mean, other than that, I've been good. Working on something cool, which hopefully I think everybody will like, but that's kind of too early to even talk about. But my wife has had to listen to me explain like 30 different ideas to her over the past 2 days.
So what are you up to nowadays? I know you stopped doing Friday Night Cranks about 4 or 5 years ago. I know late night web shows. You're no longer doing that. What are you up to? Because we haven't heard a whole lot from you in terms of the public sphere, all these YouTube videos you do.
Yeah, so I guess just for some context, in case people have no idea what they're listening to. So I did Friday Night Cranks from 2007 to 2016, pretty much every week. Only missing stuff for deaths in the family, but even that was very minimal. I think prom, I missed one. But I think over the course of the long run, we only missed maybe 10, 15 shows over an 8-9 year period, which is a little nuts. So right after Friday Night Cranks, I went into Late Night Web Show, which was very fun, but very stressful. So from, I would say, the last end of 2019 to all of this year, I just haven't been doing anything like live stream creative. I've just been kind of taking a step back and just trying to figure out what is going to be fun. So it's been a very long, frustrating process, just trying to figure out something fun to do, because I love comedy and entertaining people and doing live streams and stuff like that. But up until very recently, there really hasn't been anything that's been getting me excited to do. So I've just been taking a lot of time away from the internet, and it's been pretty good.
You wrote a book as well, Prankaholic.
I did. I have it somewhere. Oh, it's on the floor.
Yeah, I have it somewhere next to me also. It's to my left. But there it is. Yeah, show it up there. Prankaholic.
Very nice.
Which kind of goes in depth with the whole backstory with what you did with Friday Night Cranks. I guess we might as well just get into it. I mean, you kind of talked about it. So Friday Night Cranks was a prank call show, which was you think about that and you're like, what? But it wasn't you call someone and say, hey, is your fridge running? I mean, you guys had some pretty creative ideas, and then as your audience expanded, you opened up the whole opportunity for fans to send in ideas. So if they wanted to call a friend or someone who bullied them in school, whatever they wanted to do, you sent them in. And you did that. I mean, and I don't know how many subscribers did you finish with?
We finished around on YouTube, maybe 340,000 subscribers.
See, I was going to say that doesn't sound like, I mean, that's a lot. Don't get me wrong. But right now, today's day and age with YouTube, I guess that's not really considered a lot.
That's nothing.
but back then when you started, man, and I remember you would share stories. I think I remember you mentioned once in high school when you were part of FBLA for your class. You said that you were at some conference, and I guess you got recognized there as like a
Yes.
YouTube celebrity.
Yeah, that was like the first time, and it was weird because um, it was because we had a few videos go viral at once, but two that were getting very popular was like a ghost hunter prank call, and one that was done the same night live, which was like it was like we called a law firm or something, and the joke was like I needed help in the game of Grand Theft Auto or something, and those were both done on the same night, and I had like a Linkin Park hat on and a Motley Crue shirt on in those videos, so they were getting like a bunch of views. And then right around that time at the FBLA concert or conference, I wasn't paying attention, and I had the Motley Crue shirt on and the Linkin Park hat on. So people were like, "Oh, I know you from somewhere," and that was weird because these were people. I was from Long Island, and we were in Albany, so pretty far away. So these were just people that I have never been around before that were like, "Oh, what's up? Where's Joe? Where's Kristen? Can you like call them so I can say hi?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." So I'm like on an escalator, just calling them, and I'm like, "Hey, we ran into this girl," and then Kristen was like, "Yeah, well, I was actually at like Joe's like band performance, and one of the girls there recognized me and wanted to talk to you." And I'm like, "This is weird." So that was kind of like one of the first times that people outside of the show and outside of our school kind of recognized us, which was weird. And then I guess a lot of people, because we had a few more videos go viral. One is the prank call gone wrong, and then the Walmart on lockdown. A lot of people have seen the videos but didn't necessarily subscribe, because back then, especially with the early days of YouTube, like videos would just kind of blow up, and you really wouldn't gain any subscribers from it. So there were a lot of people that have seen our stuff or have shared our stuff, but just never really realized that it was an actual show. A lot of people thought they were just kind of one-off prank calls, which I guess made sense, because none of the calls that went viral were actually done on our little set. They were just done like from a computer chair or just on a day when like the set collapsed. It's just very, very funny. But I guess that added to the prank vibe, I guess.
You know what's so interesting is, and you mentioned, some of the videos that went viral. YouTube today is a lot different than it was before. Whereas, like, if you went to YouTube.com, I mean, what is it right now? 2020. Let's say 10 years ago, if you just typed in YouTube.com, it would still feature videos that maybe you're not subscribed to, but because there were a lot of people viewing it already or had a lot of comments,
right,
they would just place it on the front page of their website, and you were on there a few times.
Yeah. With some ballsy calls.
Yeah, very, very ballsy, which we'll get into, because I do want to pick your brain on some of those. But
yes,
it's so crazy how much YouTube has changed, because I know you weren't considered like a big YouTube celebrity, but back then when you started this whole thing, it was like just a dozen people, like Shay Carl and
right,
Dave Days and Philip DeFranco, and now you've got idiots like Jake Paul and Logan Paul.
God. Yeah, we actually got it was me, my buddy Eric, and a few other people all got like gifts from YouTube one year. I think it was maybe like 2008 or 2009, as like a thank you for being like one of the top 100 creators on YouTube. And like we all knew of each other, and now like there's thousands of creators, which is awesome, but it was just weird. Like at a time, it was just such a small, weird community. Like we went to the first VidCon and there was like only creators there, and now it's like a massive event with like tens of thousands of people. But the first one we went to was like in just a random little conference hall.
Well, it's insane, because I was actually doing research on this, because I knew we discussed this topic, but I was looking through YouTube's Wikipedia, and it would show like, who got the first 1 million subscribers. And it would also show like who took the lead for most subscribers. And it was like, Philip DeFranco one day, Kev Jumbo one day, and, Ryan Higa had it for 500 days. And then, Kev Jumbo took over. I mean, it's just insane. Now I don't know who the number one subscribe. I've heard PewDiePie. I have no idea who or what
I think he's like the most number one, like independent creator. There's maybe like a foreign company that makes like music videos, and they're like the biggest channel, but he's like the biggest creator,
Yeah, in
like
terms of like
independent creator.
independent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny that you brought up like the front page of YouTube and stuff, because maybe the last year or maybe 2 years ago, YouTube emailed me and they were like, hey, we're gonna have to like demonetize your entire channel because we're not cool with like any of this. So my email to them was like, but one, you featured it on the homepage, and two, you've been monetizing it for a decade. So like, you've made money, I've made money. So why are we stopping it now when I, one, have stopped uploading, and two, when like the calls aren't even that bad. But it was during one of like the adpocalypse things where they were just demonetizing a bunch of people. So I was demonetized for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then everything just started popping back up again. So I guess they got over it, but I'll still get once in a while an email from YouTube like, hey, you got a copyright strike on this video because of the hold music. And I'm like, how are these people find, like, it's a random call. It's like Lazy Town music when we like pretended to use 20 times time as the hold music. Like, what, like, are people just going through all these old videos, or are these robots?
It
like,
just takes one person, like a Karen, to report it and be like, hey, YouTube, get this guy.
Yeah. And I'm like, so I guess it's good people are still watching, which is cool. I think we still maybe pull in like 200 to 300,000 views a month, which is pretty funny considering we haven't uploaded in like forever. So people are still watching, and there's still an audience there, which is cool. And it's cool to see people commenting like, whoa, just found out about this channel. Can't wait to see what you guys do next. Well, that sucks. But there's so many videos on there, so it's fine.
You know, you mentioned your fan base. You had a pretty crazy fan base. Like, I mean, so basically the premise of the
Dedicated.
show, what's that?
I said dedicated.
Oh yeah, very dedicated for sure. I was one of them. You basically would do your shows live on Friday nights, and then you'd go for 2 hours, whatever was the best call. You guys would upload to YouTube the next day. But then it's sometimes you would just do a live stream in the middle of the week just to talk to your followers there.
Mhm.
And you would still get a bunch of people come out just to listen to you talk. I remember even again, as we're talking about how the internet has aged in the last 10-15 years, Twitter trending topics were very different, and you guys on multiple occasions were the #1 trending topic worldwide. I remember just the name Friday Night Cranks FNC on Ellen. I remember.
Yeah.
I mean, you had a pretty passionate fan base.
Yeah, because back then, with Twitter, it was just whatever people were tweeting about the most would go trending on Twitter. And then we had like, I think it was a website, Tiny Chat or something, where you could have a little chat room set up, but you had to use Twitter. So there were a bunch of people watching that made Twitter accounts specifically for Twitter, and I still see them. Like, Twitter will recommend them to me, like FNC Austin, and it says like Australian FNC fan, and like he hasn't tweeted in like 5 years. And so all those people would be chatting using the Friday Night Cranks hashtag, and then prank calls would happen. So then you would have thousands of people all tweeting like within minutes, like all different things. So we started to kind of work that to our advantage and like go viral on Twitter and just get trending topics just kind of locked down and just kind of make them whatever we want, to the point where we had 3 at one point. We had hashtag Friday Night Cranks one week, then that same week we had Rest in Peace George, and then Rest in Peace George 2, which are 3 very odd trending topics to have. And it wasn't just, some of them were in America, but that night it was like the whole world. And it was just funny seeing some of the tweets from people like, what the hell's a Rest in Peace George? Like, who died? Somebody actually did run an article that there was a rumor that like George Lopez died, because that's what Twitter was asking. And I thought that was funny. He didn't die, thankfully, but it was just like, it was just very funny. Just
you're just creating fake news at this moment.
Pretty much,
you weren't even intentionally trying, and it just happened.
Right.
It is. I wanted to ask you, because I remember you mentioned I think you went to like a restaurant once. I don't know if you were by yourself or with friends or whoever, but the server asked, hey, are you familiar with YouTube? Because she recognized you or something.
Mhm.
Did you get recognized, or do you still get recognized when you're out and about?
It hasn't happened lately. Maybe either because of the beard. Hmm? Oh, it actually did happen like a week ago.
Oh, it did.
My wife Teresa's in here. She's like, "What? It did happen recently."
Okay.
But I was FaceTiming with our friend. She just graduated from college, and she was having like a little like college little mini quarantine party at her house, and there was a girl there that just like heard my voice, and she's like, "Is that the guy from Friday Night Cranks?" And she's like, "Yeah." And it was just like, "Whoa." But so it hasn't happened as much, but for a while, I would say maybe from like 2010 to 2015, it was like a few times a month, and it was very odd. Um, and it was always awkward because people were never really sure, especially if I was by myself. Um, so if I was by myself, people would be like, "Oh, you sound familiar," or just like look at me and be like, "Say something." And I'm like, "Hi, I don't know." Um, and they'd be like, "I know you from somewhere." I'm like, "Oh, well." So either they would ask if I know what YouTube is, or I would ask, "Do you watch YouTube?" Because I make some videos, and that they would either be that connection, or they would just not be able to place it, and I would just kind of leave it. Because I was always worrying, like, did I prank call this person? Is this person gonna like flip out and punch me? Do they like me? I was at an airport once, and this guy was like staring me down like really hardcore,
Oh God.
and I was waiting for my bag, and it was Kristen's bag. I was picking her up from the airport, and the guy was staring me down.
Just to be clear,
thinking,
Kristen's your cousin. She did the show with you for a while.
Yeah. And so he was staring at me, but then when he saw her, he's like, "Oh, that's definitely them," because I'm sure there are people that either look like me or look like her, but two people that look like us in the same spot is very unlikely. So that's where it would happen most of the time. So if I was by myself, I'd be in a store and see somebody far away, and then I'd hear like the theme song on play from his phone or something, and like showing his friend and like looking. But then if I was with her, people would like point us out and be like, "Hey," and like kind of come at us. And the funniest was I was in an elevator in San Diego, and a guy was just staring me down, like looking at me, and he's like, "I know you from somewhere." I'm like, "Oh, I just moved here." He's like, "No, I know you." And I'm like, "Oh, he's gonna recognize me," and just like deck me, because like he did not seem happy. So then he was like, then when he recognized me, he was saying that he loves the show. His kids love the show. Can I stop at his floor and like say hey to his kids? So I did. And I just like poked my head into their hotel room, and I'm like, "Hey," just like left. So
that is pretty cool.
So everybody in person has been pretty nice, to the point where a girl who like, I guess was one of my biggest haters for years would just tweet me every day, just terrible things about me. To the point where it was impressive. Like it was every day. She was like, "Good morning, I hate you," just like tweeting me for years. And I never acknowledged it. I didn't want to block her because she was like, "If you're tired of my tweets, just block me." And I'm like, "No." And we were at a mall, and this girl came up to me, and Kristen was so sweet, took a picture with us. We were just kind of talking for a few minutes. She left. And then she posts on Twitter that she met me and that I was an asshole to her. Like, what are you talking about? And then we knew it was her and like placed it, but it was like, you had your chance to like say something to us in person, and she was nothing but nice, and we didn't even realize it was her till she was tweeting us like a few hours later saying that we sucked and how mean we were.
See, that's always how it works, man. Like all these people who keyboard warriors, essentially, they'll say what they want online.
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Oh, I'll say the same thing to you to your face."
Mhm.
It's funny ones, because I'll block people if they're just shitty and whatnot. Because I mean, why I don't want to see their tweets, and I don't want them to see mine. It's funny because I was at a sports bar, and there were some Chiefs fans who we all got together, and I guess this woman was there who I had blocked. And I'm just kind of like introducing myself to everyone at the table because I got there a little late. And I met one woman. I don't remember her name. And she goes, "You blocked me on Facebook, or you blocked me on Twitter." I'm like, "Okay. Why?" Like, we're all laughing. And
Yeah.
she starts by saying it was a year ago, and she's going into like this great detail as to why she thinks I blocked her. And in my head, I'm like, she's known this for a year. I'm pretty sure I blocked her for maybe saying something shitty to me, but
Yeah.
she's not saying something shitty in person. Like that's always how
Right.
it works. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that
It's
was
very
interesting.
silly.
But you know what is interesting is when you did this show, you did it on Friday night. So yeah, I mean, most people Friday nights they're going out, whatever.
Yep.
You had the complete opposite. You always stayed in on a Friday night,
Yes.
entertaining, hundreds and even thousands of people. Did you ever wish you did it maybe on a Saturday afternoon rather, or did you like it on Friday nights?
I liked it on Fridays. Some weeks it was bad if at the House of Blues, if there was a band playing that I really wanted to go see, I'm like, oh, they're playing on Friday. Like, I'm going to I'll do the show instead.
Oh, wow.
So there was a few, I can't really think of like many specific situations where I got excited about something. I was like, oh, it's on Friday, or something was supposed to be during the week and got moved to Friday. I'm like, oh, well, now I can't do it. I'm going to do the show. But no one was making me. We weren't like obligated. Nothing was going to happen other than a bunch of people mad at me, I guess, if we didn't do a show one week, so that we weren't like contractually obligated to do a show. So it was just our choice every week to do it. So it was a lot of fun. So I'm glad we did it every week. But like thinking back on it, it's just like, whoa, like that's just a lot of stuff. And a lot of like movie premieres and stuff too. I was like, oh, I wish I could go see that movie, but I have to go see it Saturday morning, I guess, before everyone spoils it for me.
How old were you when you started this?
So I was 15. I was in 10th grade. Kristen was 10 and Joe was 13. He ran like our tech for a few years. Also our cousin, Kristen's brother. And so we lied about Kristen's age for years because you had to be 14 to broadcast on Stickam. And everybody at Stickam knew like there was no way she was 14, because in a few of the conference calls, like I would not let her talk because it would just be pretty obvious once we aren't on the show and we're kind of just hanging out with people. Like it would just be pretty obvious that like she's not quite 14. So I think when she actually did turn 14, we told everybody she was 16, and then I think we just stopped addressing how old she was. Everyone just assumed at some point that she was old enough to be online, I guess. We just kind of stopped lying. But for years, Kristen's like, oh, it's my birthday. Should we have like a cake on the show? I'm like, yeah, but like, what are we going to write on the cake? Like, just happy birthday. Do we even address how old you are? And it was just a funny thing because we didn't want to get thrown off of Stickam or YouTube for her being too young.
Well, I think what's so interesting is you guys were so young, but was your family opposed to this? I mean, what did they say when you came up with this idea?
Well, we went about it separately. So I think Kristen talked to her mom or dad, whichever one she thought was going to be like the best chance of like saying it was going to be fine. And then I talked to my dad because I knew my mom was like not going to be on board. And my dad, like has done a lot of work at different banks and computer companies and stuff. So like he understands technology. And I was just explaining like live streaming, and like he told me like, oh, well, we have a webcam in the basement that I hid from you guys. So it's like in a printer box. It came with a printer that he bought in like 2000. And so we kind of took a split approach with our parents, and then we swapped. And then I think Kristen talked to my mom, and then I talked to her dad or whoever. And then we talked to everybody together at once and was like, here's what we're doing. And then we addressed everybody's issues. I knew they were going to say like, you're going to be using your phones and we're going to star 67 so we can't be traced. But back then it was harder. And you're going to waste all of our minutes. No, because AT&T free nights and weekends start after 9:00 on Fridays. So we won't use any minutes on your phones or our cell phone plan. So we'll start at 9. That way it's free minutes when we make the prank calls. And that was kind of their only issues. And then we couldn't tell, they didn't want anybody to know where we lived or where we were even from. We just said that we were from New York. And that got all messed up when we started having friends come on the show, or at least be kind of on the side. And one girl walked to the other side wearing a hoodie that had our high school name on it. Then people in the chat room were like, oh, so you guys go to like the William Floyd School District. You guys must be from Shirley or Mastic Beach. And then like within the next day, people had our address. It was just like, oh no.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did you guys have stalkers or?
There were two hilarious incidents that like I still can't get over. So the first one, they were kind of back to back. The first incident, these two girls showed up and said that they were here for the show. So my parents were like, all right, whatever, because it was in the basement of my parents' house. So people would just come to the front door at like 8:50 and my dad would be sitting there and just send them on down to the basement. And he would be watching from his laptop upstairs and there's like a delay. So if you watch some of the older calls, I think one of them where I talk about getting stung by a bee, we would like look up and off to the side. And that's because our parents would be coming down to like yell at us to like stop what we were doing because like they thought it was too crazy. I think another call, I was trying to get breast implants as Brandon and my mom came down and was like, this is like not going to go the way you think it's going to go. So we're like mouthing to each other, like not yelling, but just like yelling, but without using words to each other. So my mom would stop watching. She would just kind of go to bed and my dad would just sit up and watch. And like, if we would say something stupid or funny and like 30 seconds later, we'd hear him laugh or like the couch, like shake, we knew like we were kind of on track. Or if we heard like the recliner close and footsteps, we were like, oh no, we like said something that we shouldn't have. So these two girls showed up and said, we're here for the show. These two girls came down and it was like right as we were about to go live. And they just said, hey, we said, hey, I assumed Kristen knew them. Kristen assumed I knew them. Joe assumed like, so we just did the show. They're like, that was so much fun. Everybody gave hugs. They left. And Kristen was like, they're really nice. Who were they? I'm like, I don't know. Joe, did you know them? And he's like, no. And then we realized like, oh, like we have no idea who these girls were. So they seemed to have fun and they never came back. So
you always had weird things. You always have like the weirdest stories, man, with fans so and everything.
Yeah, there's all, they only get weirder. So then the next week, I got a message on Stickam right before the show started. And this guy's username was the White Ninja. And he was on camera because if you were watching live, 6 people could turn on their webcams and you could just watch people watch the show.
Oh, through Stickam.
Yeah, through the live streaming platform. So it got weird. People would take their shirts off and their pants off, and we saw some stuff that we should not have been seeing, but it's par for the course, I guess. But this one dude, he did not do any of that. He was called the White Ninja, and he was just in like a ninja outfit, and he messaged me. He's like, hey, I saw you in school the other day. You go to this high school, blah, blah, blah. Could I come watch the show? And it was like our 1-year anniversary show. So I was like, sure. He's like, could I bring a sword? And we're like, yeah. And so here's the address. So my dad answers the door. I honestly thought he was going to show up and like get dressed at the house, but he shows up dressed as a ninja with like these 2 swords on his back, telling my dad that like he's the White Ninja and he's here for the show. And my dad was like, all right, they must know this guy. So then he like comes down the stairs and he just nods and we say hi. And like, he doesn't say a word to us. He's just like staring at us. So I was like, it'd be funny if when we start this show, you're hiding behind the couch and Kristen will cough or something. And that'll be your signal to like jump up like a ninja. And we'll just act like we don't know you were there. So Kristen was very nervous, as was I. And the whole time we're both assuming his swords are fake. So he jumps up, he draws a sword. He's like holding it to my neck. And we're like, this is hilarious. There's a ninja here. So funny. So Kristen held paper, like 5 sheets of paper, and had him swing it. And he cut right through the paper. And I have the clip somewhere. You just see it on my face. Or like, oh shit, this is like, these are live swords. And we have no idea who this dude is. Like he could just kill us live. But he was cool. He stayed in character the whole time. We had cake. We offered him cake. He faced the wall and took his mask, his like ninja mask off, which was just really like this kind of like, I don't even know. Just like a sheet he cut up to like make a ninja mask. He took that off and ate, and Kristen walked to the side of him to ask if he wanted more. And he like almost flipped out because like he didn't want her to see him. So then the show is over. We come upstairs. he asks very quietly if he could get a ride home because I don't know if he got dropped off or what, but it was now 11 o'clock at night. So Kristen's dad was there to pick Kristen and Joe up. He's like, yeah, I'll take you home. So he's giving their parents directions and tells them to pull over and just gets out of the car and runs off into the night. Like they didn't even pull into a driveway. They were just at a random intersection. And the rest of the time he came back to the show and he was never once in a car. Like he just showed up. So I don't know if he was always getting rides, but that was the only ride we gave him. But he was a cool dude.
No other interaction with White Ninja?
Well, a few years after that, I figured out who he was, and now we're friends on Facebook and we talk sometimes.
Oh, because he went to your school.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So I figured out who he was, and it wasn't that. It was hard, but not hard. But he wasn't known as like a white ninja other than like Stickcam. So it wasn't like a thing he did around school or that people would know him by. But he would like leave me voicemails like, "Hey man, was walking behind you. Have a good day." Oh, that is weird. So I would walk around the school, and when I would see people looking at me, I would call the number, and then I finally saw him look down at his phone. I'm like, oh, so that's him. And then like walked up to him and said, hey, and he's cool.
You don't have to go into like the personal, like the specific details of this, because I know it is a little personal in terms of, how much money you made from this on YouTube. But I will say this, and I think a lot of people know this if they just, you can even do a Google search. I've heard it's anywhere between $1 to $2.50 for every 1,000 views you get. So if anyone wants to do the math, go take the time to do that. But the question I wanted to ask you, I mean, you're a teenager and you were in your early 20s when you did this. Was this something where you were able to make so much money where you didn't have to work a job? This was like your main source of income?
Yes, for a very long time. That was like the only source of income we had. And I was working at a library and in high school. Then when the show was picking up, I was finally telling my parents, I'm like, I was like, this is dumb. Like I'm working at a library and I'm getting these checks from YouTube. And it really didn't set in for me or really for anybody until back in the day, YouTube would mail checks, was arriving from YouTube. And I think the first check we got was like $100 or something like crazy, but it was like 3 months worth of views because they would only pay out if you get like $100 or more. So we got like $100.25. And they actually had the check sent. And then the next week was like $1,000 or the next month was like $1,000. And it got to the point where when I was finishing high school, just from YouTube and like website ads, we were pulling in like close to like 5,000-6,000 a month. And that was like horrifying because we were like, this is way too much money for like a stupid prank call show. And then then we realized very early on, like this YouTube ad revenue is not sustainable. Like it's not a bubble, but it's going to crash. Like the rates are going to drop. Like there's going to be some problems with YouTube. And so we started selling merch and like getting some sponsors and doing some other things to like diversify where the money was coming from. But I remember talking to people in like 2008 and 2009, like other YouTubers, and like having the discussion with them, like we need to diversify where our income's coming in because the YouTube ad revenue is just like not like predictable. Like we can't really rely on it. And it's like a month or two delay. So if you do have a video that goes viral or something happens, like you're not going to see that money for a while. And then me and I'm sure a bunch of other creators started making merchandise and we were selling albums on iTunes and just other things. So now inevitably, like you're still kind of making that same rate with YouTube. You're also splitting it 60-40 with YouTube. And now like nowadays it's like you kind of have to diversify. You can't just have one. You can't just be living off of YouTube because if you say one wrong thing or a year later they decide you're not advertiser worthy, like you just get so screwed and like it's very sad. So
I know you were, and I was listening to your podcast, and I know you keep getting this question of, hey, are you going to bring the show back? and I've heard you say this multiple times about, that you do miss the show, but in a way there was so much prep. People think, by the way, it's so funny, because I can relate to you a little bit. I'm sure you've had people tell you, oh, is it that hard to just do a show for 2 hours?
Right.
Whereas,
yes. You work 2 hours a week. It's like the easiest job. Yeah.
It's funny because I used to do a Chiefs podcast, and, I mean, I always wanted to do a good job of that. I would, study. I obviously knew our team pretty well, but I would also, study the upcoming opponents. You have to know the stats, the injuries, the storylines, all that kind of stuff. And it did get to the point where, and plus it's like, some players have weird to pronounce names like mine. So you have to like figure out the right pronunciation because you don't want to sound like an idiot, which that was not a 100% success rate. I'll leave it at that. But
yeah,
it's one of those things where you had to put a lot of time and effort. And I just, said to my followers, I said, look, I'm going to stop doing the show pretty soon because it is becoming too much. And I got one tweet. I'll never forget this. It was actually an iTunes review. Now that I think about it, someone goes, "Oh, is it too much for you to press record and talk?" Yes, because all we do is just press record and talk. All we do.
I wish it was that easy.
Yeah, I wish it was too. But yeah, I can relate when you talk about the whole burnout thing. Mm-hmm. Is that one of the reasons why you decided to put it to an end?
Yeah, and I think like the biggest part of it was like it was becoming less and less fun, and it was becoming like it was taking more energy out of me to do, and I guess like the time I was putting into it and what I was getting out of it, the scale kind of shifted to where I was putting a lot into it and not getting a lot out of it, and it just got to a point where for a while I was like, oh, this is like good living, like this is fine. And then it got to a point where I was like, even as like a job, like this is just not fun or sustainable to have like that amount of pressure, because it wasn't just the live shows I was doing the reading all the requests. We were getting anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000 requests a week. And I would read, swear to God, I would read every single one of them before the show because I didn't want to miss any idea. Honestly, I probably missed a few because I was just kind of clicking and I could just like see if it was a good idea or not without even reading it. I can't even explain it. And then, we're also selling merch. So I was shipping merch, not as, people would order shit and just like never get it for like a few months or whatever. Keeping up with like who won contests, who bought stuff from iTunes, was having problems.
I won a lot of contests, by the way.
Yeah. And, then we were also getting meetings with like different celebrities to like help celebrities edit YouTube videos, which was like a weird thing that people asked of us. We were meeting with like Comedy Central and MTV to discuss like different TV show projects we wanted to do and they wanted to do. So there was a lot that was going on outside of the show, which I covered a lot of it all in the book. And all of that was very fun. But it got to a point in like maybe like in 2013 or 2014 where I had 4 cameras set up and the confetti cannon and all these lights and the prank call program and the videos coming on behind me. And I was thinking like, this is a lot for like a prank call show. Like, where do you go from here? Like, how do you go to the next thing? And I couldn't think about that while doing it every week because there was no time to sit and like transition into anything. So I was kind of just spinning in circles trying to figure out like, all right, well, I could get 4K cameras. But like, okay, that's not going to like make it more fun to do. That's just going to make it more work to edit the videos because it's going to take longer to edit the videos. Or I could upgrade the computer so it's faster. And it was just like, it was turning into like, there was no kind of correct way. I was getting in trouble with sponsors because I just wasn't paying attention to certain things during the live streams, or I called one sponsor out live for not paying me before the show and people like ripped them apart on Twitter. It was so funny. But it was just like a lot of just unnecessary pressure. And there was the pressure of like, all right, you did a good show this week. And immediately, as soon as the show would wrap up, I'd close the laptop and immediately be like, all right, what do I do next week? What's like the next because what I just did was funny, but nobody cares now because it's over. So, and there was no time to like think about anything. So, after a while, I was like, this is just not fun. It's funny. Like I'm laughing. It's very easy for me to do. There was no challenge anymore. Like I just knew, all right, if all else fails, Brendan can call a Walmart and it's going to be funny. Like, even like no matter what happens. And then a lot of the requests too, like they were all the same. Like I would read it like we did that, or we did a variation of that, or we kind of did something like that, or I've read this 20,000 times. It's not funny. I'm not going to do it. And there was only one prank call that I never did that I wish we did. And we tried so many times to do and just never worked. And it was the broken hold prank call, where we would call somebody. Usually they tried out for a show or something and we'd interview them. And we would go to put them on hold and say, I'm going to talk to my manager because I think like you're a great contestant for The Amazing Race. And we'd go to put them on hold, but we would just talk shit about them and then come back to the call and act like they're doing great. And Kristen did one where she was like, she's like, I can't stand this guy. He's too tall. Cause they said he was like 5'8", and she said he was too tall. And like, the guy's like, I'm not tall. I'm 5'8's not tall. She's like, what are you talking about? And like, just pretended he was dumb. And like, he's like, but you said to the guy, and she's like, no, I put you on hold. But it was funny, but it never like reached the point where I was like, that's amazing. And we tried it for years and it just never worked out. But yet some of the most off the wall ideas we can't come up with like worked instantly. So, so it was a lot of burnout plus not having fun, plus everything kind of seeming stale and not having a chance to kind of reset and figure out what's going on. So that's what I've been doing for the past like year and a half. And there have been lots of ideas I've thought of and like, oh, I should try this or do that. And I'm just like, but I guess good news very recently. I've had a very good idea that I'm excited about. So we'll see.
Is it related to FNC in any way? Can you say?
Oh, yeah, 100%. But it's not what anybody thinks it's going to be. So it's not a reunion or a reboot or anything like that. It's you guys will see. It's all right. That's even if it.
I will say, I'll just toss an idea. I think you tried to do this for a while, but maybe you stopped. But there are certain calls. Actually, that's what I wanted to get into, and we'll jump to that quickly. But there are a lot of great calls that you guys never did upload. Like if you had to watch it live, but we're gonna say. By the way, I have to share this. So I took a screenshot of our little Zoom meeting here, and I sent it to a couple of my friends who, I introduced Friday Night Cranks to them. Yeah. And I got to give a shout out to my friend Tasha because
what's up, Tasha?
I sent her a text, a screenshot. I said, look who I'm doing a podcast with. She goes, is that Marcus? I go, nope. That's Marcus. Jared from Friday Night Cranks. And her response in capital letters, holy shit. So she's obviously
hello, Tasha.
See you. No, I also sent one to my friend Sharon. I don't know if you remember. She sent in a request. Really funny. She actually told me about this. She sent in a request to have your friend Stu Stone, who was supposed to be on this podcast, but he gave me the runaround 100 times, which sucked. But
that's Stu.
Yeah, I know it is Stu. But you basically, you guys were going to call people with the name. With the last name Frizzle, and Stu, who was a voice actor for the Magic School Bus as Ralphie, he was going to call and say, hey, Mrs. Frizzle, it's me, Ralphie, remember? Yeah. And funny enough, I think both the people you guys called, they weren't in on the joke, but they kind of played along and said, oh yeah, Magic School Bus. Yeah, right. But the funny part is, that was the real Ralphie calling. Right. Like, that's the crazy part. And they don't know. That would have been so cool if they knew. But I know. I was going to ask you something, but I completely forgot. I'll probably remember it in a minute. So I did want to ask you about like some of your memorable calls. This one, actually, you guys did not upload online, but I'll never forget this. I was watching you guys live. You called AOL and you claimed to be an administrator.
Yes, and we were getting everybody's AOL passwords reset to ABC123.
Oh, I don't remember what I thought. I thought it was different. See, the one I recorded, that is pretty funny. Resetting them to ABC1. But the one I do recall was you were telling them to reboot the servers. And I
I
remember.
don't remember this, but that sounds like
I was
me.
thinking. I was thinking to myself, wait a minute. He's just telling them this. Like there was no proof
Yeah,
that he's an admin. And I'm looking at your view count. I said, okay, if he loses like hundreds of followers, we'll probably know. And I did not have AOL. I don't know what I had at the time.
like DSL or something.
Yeah, probably. And it's funny because the person on the phone was about to do it, and I think they used their, you know, their judgment and thought, okay, wait a minute, maybe this is not a good idea. So, do you remember that one?
Very
You've
vaguely.
had so many over the years.
There have been so many, and I have, messed with the idea of going back and like finding old calls and posting them, and I think like that will happen at some point, but in the meantime, like for me, I was thinking like that would be fun, but I'm trying to like find something like new and like fun to do live. But I do think finding old calls and posting them like will happen at some point, but I'm just not the guy to do it. I have like stacks of hard drives with like every show, and like it's painful enough to listen to your own voice, but I don't remember a majority of these calls. So to like have to listen to all of the show and like not know what's about to happen is very confusing. Some people have messaged me about very specific calls like, hey, this was like July 9th in 2014. You called this place. It was like halfway through the show. So I'm like, all right. Some of those are easy to pull. And I know you're looking at me because you're going to bring up a very specific call that you want me to post. But we can talk about that in a minute. But it's just a lot of work and a lot of like crazy time. But I have been messing with the idea. I'm not going to do it anytime soon, but I would like to do some sort of like reaction type of videos where I watch like older videos of Friday Night Cranks that I have no recollection of.
That. I think a lot of people would like that.
See, because I watched me and my wife Teresa, we watched the 9-year-old Xbox prank call yesterday because my nephew is like obsessed with YouTube and like wants to be a YouTuber. And for years he didn't know I was on YouTube, and then he like Googled me or something, or this one of the brothers like told him about it. And so that he's like, I watched that video, and I'm like, I remember it. And I remember some of the quotes from it, but I watched it and like I had to keep pausing it because I'm like, oh my God, like it's a weird feeling to not know what you're about to say from 10 years ago. Like it's a weird feeling. So I think doing some sort of like reaction videos is going to be fun. That's not the big main idea I've been working on, but maybe part of it. But that seems to be like a lot of fun, just watching stuff that everybody knows that I do not remember because so many calls have happened. I think we've done over like 10,000 calls, or at least attempted 10,000 calls, not successfully, but at least attempted.
I do remember what I was going to say, by the way. So there were actually a couple of times where you guys prank called famous people. One of them, and this is actually a little bit well known in my area, was the Shirley Phelps prank call.
Oh yeah,
because she's from my neck, and well, not too close to me, but Topeka, Kansas. Yeah. There was another one, and I know this is not uploaded, but I do remember watching it live, and I think this one did not go as planned, but it was the Tila Tequila call.
Yes.
Yeah, I do remember that one.
I remember that.
How did you pull those off?
So we have, I still have the domain name. We have a domain name that's very similar to a popular like news company. Like they started off as like a tabloidy kind of magazine, and now they're kind of transitioning into like a news. And we have a domain name that's very similar to it that's forwarded to the real website. So I would email people like Tila Tequila and Brian Silva and Shirley Phelps from that email address that looks very similar, saying, hey, we're from this website, blah, blah, blah. Check us out. Here's the link. And it's like the link to the real website. We would love to interview you. And if you bug them enough, like you get a response from the manager. I don't know how we got Tila Tequila's manager's email. I think I probably just Googled it, or she had it in her Twitter bio or something back in the day, like for management, contact this person. I contacted this person, and the person's only stipulation was that he needed to be on the phone the entire time with her, which I was trying to avoid because he was going to take away all the funny stuff if she couldn't be herself on the call. And then you have people like Shirley Phelps or Brian Silva where they were by themselves and it went exactly as planned. So now Tequila kind of is little off the rails. So I think we pranked her at a good time, but there probably won't be another attempt at pranking her. So yeah, Ben Shirley Phelps was fun too. And that was kind of like our first person that we talked to that was well known. And that was terrifying. Like I was so nervous doing that call just because I felt like she was evil and gonna like kill me through the phone somehow.
You know what? Well, and there's not like one specific call that I recall from this, but I thought I knew you didn't like this. And I think we had this discussion once before, but I burst out laughing every single time because you called Walmart and Apple several times over the Walmart. I mean, I guess there's like a rivalry between you and Walmart, but I remember there were several times where you would call somebody and they would, answer the phone and you would try to attempt your prank. And then they would come back and say, "Is this Jared?"
Yeah.
And I was just like, what? How did they know? So, and by the way, you have several Walmart calls. There's the one where you put Walmart on lockdown because you called saying that you left
my baby.
Yeah, you left your baby, even though that never happened. No. You have several Walmart calls. If you just go through the list on your YouTube page, which I'm doing right now.
Yeah, my favorite is I don't know what it's called, and I know what you're about to ask. Yes, they did. They do still, as of maybe a year ago, somebody confirmed when I was speaking out of college that he worked at a Walmart in 2018. And they used the Walmart on lockdown as like part of their training, like how to not handle like a customer service call. And I think that's great. And Walmart did email me offering me like a couple $1,000s to remove the video. And I just told them no. It was just pretty much like, no, thanks, Jared. So that was odd. They didn't seem to like it that much, but I guess that's fine. But I think my favorite Walmart call is when I called. I don't remember. It was either me or Kristen or both, but the original concept was like there were a bunch of blind children that were tied together. Like on leashes wandering Walmart, and we were gonna go pick them up, and now we don't want to. So, like it was like I was supposed to be babysitting a bunch of blind kids, but we didn't say they were blind till the end. And then I was yelling at Walmart saying like they're just gonna walk out the door and like go missing. And I just loved how all the calls started off pretty normal and slowly like descended into like complete insanity. So by the time like they think there's 12 children leashed together playing hide and seek, or they were doing a scavenger hunt in Walmart. They were trying to find lawnmowers or something. So now they think they're all these kids that are going to like play with the heavy appliances. Then at the end, tell them that they're blind and that I'm not going to get them because I want to sit and have a beer or something. Like it just got so silly.
The way you described it, saying how they started off normal and then the crazy shit got in. It reminds me of like you're the Sacha Baron Cohen of prank calls. Like you made it seem so realistic, and then you wait for that perfect moment to twist things. And because you made it sound so normal in the beginning, they just went with it more times than not.
Yeah, and I think that the two best examples would be when I called Petco or PetSmart saying I found like a blind bear or a mentally handicapped baby bear outside, and I was going to like nurse it, and then I was going to like take it into the store for them to like groom him or something. And like, then the call hangs up. Then Stu called them from their corporate number because we would change our caller ID, saying like, why did you tell this customer no? So now they're trying to explain to Stu, thinking he's like corporate, like, no, this man has a bear. So then I call back and I'm saying like, I'm outside, I'm going to come in, and the bear's in a wheelchair. So like, he's not going to hurt anybody because he's like mentally handicapped. And like, the people on the phone at one point was like, how does he even know that? And like, that's the whole point. But they were so terrified that like I was going to come in with this bear. It's so silly because if we started the call saying, hey, I found a bear, I'm going to bring it into the store, they would just hang up. So it's just like slowly working in the silliness to where me walking in with a bear in a wheelchair seems so normal at that point, because I kept saying I found a cub, and then they thought I was saying dog for some reason.
Because they sound so alike.
Yeah. So, it was very odd.
My personal, by the way, during this whole like quarantine, I mean, I didn't quarantine a whole lot. I was still working. But there were a couple days where I did stay home and I would actually just play video games, and to the side, I would actually play Friday Night Cranks. It's crazy, man. Like, I haven't listened to some of these in a long time, and it's actually pretty cool, like how funny some of these still are over the years. One of my personal favorites, this one lasted 15 minutes and almost 16 minutes. You called Walmart and you said that you were lost inside their store. you keep calling them through your phone and you're saying, hey, I'm at the pet food aisle. And then you told them that you left the building from the back with your groceries in your dog food in your hand. And then you asked your audience, you said, hey, press 3 if I should die. And you came up with some sound effects to make it seem like... My favorite part was you claimed someone shot you. And you were on the ground. And the best part was you go, I see. Sorry. You said, I see Jesus. It was so well done. How do you not laugh when you do these, by the way?
It's hard not to. There are a lot of
I'm crying right now from laughter.
That's funny, just remembering, like, because that all happened. Where part of us knew, like, if you laugh now, then you're not going to be able to like laugh at it. So if you like mess it up now, it's not going to be funny. And the other part is like, you have to just believe what you're saying. So like, if I'm getting angry at these people for not having a medium wonton soup on their menu, and they just have small and large, and I want a medium, and I'm like getting angry, like you actually have to get angry. Like you're not even acting. You just have to get like actually upset, because now it's not funny. It's funny to everybody else, but it's not funny to me or Kristen because we're actually pissed. So
you're pretending like these are real scenarios.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So a lot of the times when I'm getting frustrated with the people on the phone, it's not because like it's not funny. It's because like they're going along with it. So like the person would be frustrated in that situation. So, and we would always try and kind of either match their vibe or just be the complete opposite. Like if they were getting frustrated, we would get like a little more frustrated, or if they were very angry, we would be like the complete opposite to like where it's now their fault. But that was the whole mentality. And there were a few calls where we've laughed like mid-sentence because just some of the stuff is just so ridiculous. Yeah. Or in other videos, like we'd be like punching each other on the shoulder to like mute the mic so we could laugh. Because our microphones would have like a mute button on it, so we'd hit it if we needed to laugh, or if we had people watching, they'd be like waving us down, or like our friends would like leave the room and like come back when the call was over. Sometimes they'd go upstairs and watch with my dad upstairs because like they just couldn't handle it downstairs in the basement where some of the stuff was happening. But yeah, just the mentality where like if we laugh now, it's not going to be funny, and it's hard when you have no idea what they're going to say, or if you're doing a call with like Kristen and Stu, or Stu, like, or anybody, like you just don't know where it's going. So like anything could happen. So you just have to just kind of be ready. I think one of the funniest ones where I did laugh, but we muted it just in time, I think, was when we called a plumbing company, an emergency plumbing company, saying that our basement was flooded. And it flooded all the way up to the stairs. So we got a bowl of water and we're acting like we're going underwater to swim. And like,
I do remember that.
I like almost drowned at one point. And like, then Kristen goes and the best part was like during that call, Stu texted me. He's like, I'm on my phone watching, like I'm coming home. I'm like 2 minutes away from my house. I want to jump in on this call. Do not hang up on this guy. So
I do recall that part.
So then the best part was when Stu got on the call, he had a ball of water. Now he's going underwater. And it was just so unexpected because like we're covered in water at this point. And like for somebody to join the call that we know has been watching, but like has no reason to commit to like pretending to drown, does it. Like it was just so funny to me because like I didn't expect that. And then just the whole dynamic towards the end, it gets very calm. And then the guy starts asking about, Kristen mentions how like the Kardashians got renewed for a 4th season. And there was much more simpler times. And the guy on the phone like calms down. He's like, oh yeah, I heard that too. And Stu's like, could you guys do me a favor? And we're like, yeah. And it gets so quiet that he just starts screaming to like, shut up and like, F this, F that. It was just so funny. And like, we was hoping like, when we were talking very quietly, we were like, I'm hoping he's going to start screaming because otherwise people at home were just going to get very quiet and it's going to be like some predated ASMR type of stuff, which, but yeah, it was just always fun to just see what was going to happen and what people were going to believe. And then just know if we laugh, we're going to ruin everybody's night.
By the way, I know we're going a little over on time. I just looked.
No, take your time.
Okay, you sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there were a few others I wanted to just kind of pick your brain and just get your reaction. So this one's funny because first of all, it's the Ruckus Pizza prank call where basically you called this guy and immediately he was just pissed.
Yeah, and that was the weirdest part because the original request was this place is like refusing to place pizza orders. And the kid sent it in like several times when I read it. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like they're a pizza place. They're probably just mad at this kid. So I don't know if the kid was already trying to prank them or if they were getting pranked or something happened. But we called. All we said was we were trying to place an order and this dude is like losing it. And it just got funnier and funnier to the point where we were pranking them for like years.
Well, what's funny is people found the address to this place and people started calling themselves just a prank call. People I would see this upload online and I think the guy goes, it's not Friday night. Like he knew who you were after a while. And I think what's even funnier is there's another pizza place in America called Ruckus Pizza and people would, blow them up on their Facebook page and they're like, that's not us. Like they were trying to deflect that whole thing. Yeah. That was crazy.
Was so funny. Yeah.
Man, by the way, this one I just came across. This is actually how you and I met. So because I was such a big fan of the show and on my old laptop, I found a way to actually like record whatever, what was on my screen. So I actually recorded your calls because I knew you would not upload all of them. And I know a lot of fans actually recorded as well. Yeah. And you announced on your social media that your computer crashed or it didn't save your audio file.
Yes.
And so I had the penguin prank call at this zoo in Chicago. And it's funny because sometimes, when they pick up, they say, hey, Walmart in, Salisbury, North Carolina or whatever.
Yeah.
So people would call and actually look things up. I actually felt, for whatever reason, I just Googled, they actually did have like a penguin that died the same week you called.
Oh my God. That's horrible timing.
Yeah, that is horrible timing. You have the weirdest luck with this stuff, man. Yeah. I do remember that. Is there any, I know you said the storage facility call is your favorite, but is there any that you feel like is underrated?
I think if people have time and want to watch the Tickle Me Pink crayon call, because it's so random. We called like an addiction helpline and Kristen was posing as my wife saying that I was addicted to eating Tickle Me Pink crayons. And when I didn't, I got like loud and violent. And just because there's no video to it because we lost the video. It was an early show. So we lost the video to that. So it's just the audio, and just the audio of that sounds so insane. Like, I don't know, like a lot of our calls sound legit, but this one sounds like she is in absolute danger because I had these half-filled water bottles because we would drink water bottles on the show. So like they would get hot pretty quickly in the basement in New York during the summer. So we had like a bunch of half-empty ones. So I was taking them and slamming them at the wall as hard as I could while I was screaming at her and making this like pterodactyl screech. But it sounds like I'm like going insane. And this lady like ended up calling the police and had us on speaker and trying to get the police on the line. And we hung up. And for the first year, I was like, that lady's so dumb. And then after a while, I'm like, oh no, this sounded like way too real. Like I got a little too carried away with how intense it was. Because she was like, I think Kristen said her name was Melinda. She's like, Melinda, do you feel like you're in danger right now? And I'm looking at her, I'm like, if you say yes, like she's telling the police to like, come over. So that was a little scary, but yeah, there were a few calls that are just so funny to me now because of just how absurd they are. And then I feel like there was another one I watched recently.
It's funny.
Yeah, I mean, they're all pretty
a couple of years ago, my brother and I, we were on our way to Manhattan, Kansas. Mm-hmm. It was Labor Day weekend, so we just wanted to see the city. It's a college town close to where we live, but they had some nice places that we wanted to go visit. And it was the weekend. We were off work, so we decided why not. On the way there, we stopped at Topeka, and we tried this place called the Burger Stand. They only have it, for those listening, they only have it in Topeka and in Lawrence, Kansas. Definitely check it out. But as we're leaving Topeka, I thought, let me stop by South Topeka Boulevard, because it was mentioned in the Where is Jared call. You called a Pizza Hut, I think.
Yeah.
And you were just asking, where is Jared? And crazy enough, it just you were able to elicit this crazy reaction. And I actually drove by that. I'm like, yep, that's the pizza place he called. So that was kind of funny. I just kind of thought of that.
That's hilarious.
I'm trying to, I'm just looking through your list right now. These really do bring back some memories. I'm gonna have to do like a binge FNC.
Me too. I might have to. I'm gonna do my little.
I'm trying to look through. It's funny. You alluded to this earlier. I love this one. But by the way, you had a show. It was in the summer of 2009. You had 3 great calls that night. You never posted any of them. One of them, you called a grocery store, and I think you said, "Oh, I lost my lucky penny in one of the aisles," and. I'll be honest, I don't even remember the details, but for some reason I just remember it being so funny. I think the same night you had another call where you told a guy that you were you wanted to know if the cereals had like a specific, you remember some of those like kids cereals that had like toys inside them or whatever?
Yeah.
And you were asking the manager if they had toys inside them, and you almost got him to put his hand inside the cereal boxes. But the biggest one that night was like some drug test prank call. So, okay, you wrote about this in your book. Mm-hmm. What do you want to say about that night? Because that's probably the craziest call you've ever done.
Yeah, and I did listen to it recently, and it is horrifying because of how naive we were, and we didn't realize, because this was an early-ish show. We were only a few years into it. And this was the first call that really got out of hand. And we didn't realize at the time, it really didn't sink until years later, how convincing we are over the phone. So kind of like I said earlier, I always kind of alluded it to the person being like dumb or not paying attention or just really stressed out. But then listening to some back years later, I'm like, oh, this sounds like very convincing. So this girl's best friend sent in an idea. She was watching live, said, you should call this girl, my best friend's dad. She just took a drug test for her work, and call and say she failed. So I was like, all right, this is easy. Like the dad will get pissed. We'll say it's a joke. The end. What could possibly happen? So, you know what happens. We call and tell the guy I'm in New York, and he is, I don't know where the hell he is. He's not in New York. He is maybe in Florida or somewhere, nowhere near where I'm at, that I'm at like the corporate headquarters, and I have the test results from his daughter's drug test. He immediately gets so pissed that his daughter's work gave her a drug test without his permission because she's only 16. We didn't know any of this. That's a very valid reason to be pissed, but not what we were going for. So we break the news that she failed, and I believe we said marijuana. I also might think we may have said heroin. I don't know. Because there was a similar call we did that started like that, where we definitely said heroin. So I don't know if we reused that joke or if we just said marijuana. I think we said marijuana, but it's also possible we said heroin. But either way, this guy is so pissed. He hangs up the phone. We kind of call back. He hangs up the phone, and he goes down to where the girl is working. His daughter is working. I don't know what the hell kind of store it was or whatever. Goes there and starts losing his mind on everybody that they gave her a drug test.
Just to be clear, like this is while you're doing your show. You're doing other calls, but right, so you learned about this part later.
Yes, because the girl that is watching is getting texts from the girl, like, my dad just showed up at my work, he's pissed. So she's piecing it together, and she's letting Joe know, because we were doing a call that it was probably the serial one that didn't start off that funny, and Joe was like losing his shit at the computer laughing, and he's like scribbling, because he would take the requests and print them out as they came in real time. He was like scribbling stuff down, and he's like holding stuff up, and we're like looking at him, we don't know what he's talking about. So he finally explains, like, the dad from that other call is at the girl's work. We're like, oh. So he causes a scene there. They call the police. The cops show up and ask him to leave. And he's freaking out that they drug tested her without his permission, which I get. And they were like, we don't even have the results back yet. And they're like, well, the guy called from New York. And they were like, no, like, we don't have the results yet. So he takes the daughter. I believe they fired her, or she quit, or he made her quit. One of those. She was no longer working that night. And they go home. So now the best friend, we're telling her to like go over to the house to explain what's going on, because we're like, there's no way he's going to answer. So we call back, I believe, one more time in between. And I told him that I was like not okay with how he acted at the store. So he gets even more mad. So I told him I was going to come down there and like come to his house. So then minutes later, there was another call. A lot of people have blurted out their address, like, come on down to, blah, 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 and fight me. So I don't know if he did that, or we just said we knew where he lived. So we hung up the phone, spoofed our number to the number of his house phone, and called his cell phone. So he gets a call from his house phone, and I tell him that I'm inside his house and he should come find me. And we thought it was just going to end there. And the girl who requested this led us to believe that she was going to go over there. But then she was telling me, like, no, like, I'm not going over there. I'm not doing it.
Why would you?
So now this dude cocks a shotgun and is walking around his house trying to find me. So we couldn't tell. And at this point, honestly, we couldn't tell if people were screwing with us, because we knew at some point somebody was going to try and prank us and be a whole big thing. So he's like looking around, and then I asked if he checked the closet, and he's like kicking doors in, and like it's this loud thing. And I told him to check under the bed, and I'm thinking like he's going to end up like shooting his wife or his kid or like something. And his poor daughter in the background has no idea what's happening. And I honestly don't know how it ends. I think we just kind of hang up and end it like that, because the cops showed up, and it was the same cops that threw him out of the store.
Oh my God.
To his house, and he's like,
twice in one night.
Yeah. Now this guy who called about the drug test is now in his house and like trying to find him. So if you're listening, don't do any of that, because that breaks quite a few laws that we did. And I do believe they did find out that it was a joke, but I have not like personally spoken to these people except the girl who requested the prank. And I think the daughter emailed me a few years later asking if she could hear the call because her dad wanted to hear it. And I was like, nope.
Oh no.
No one's hearing that.
Oh,
that is being tucked away forever. God, but that was a funny.
It's funny because
call.
I know that was not the exact incident here, but some people are like, hey, call my mom, call my dad. And they're like in the other room laughing and watching this while they're listening to their parents shout on the phone. So it's like they have two versions of the audio, basically.
Exactly.
Which is kind of a funny way to put it.
Yeah.
Man, I'm trying to go through a couple more. This one has 14 million views. It's called Prank Call Gone Wrong. So basically, you call asking for, what was the guy's name?
James.
So you're calling asking for James, and for whatever reason, the person who picked up the phone, which happened to be James's mom, she thought you were James.
Yes,
And
the original concept was I was going to be Brandon and ask him out on a date. I was going to ask James out on a date and just make him very uncomfortable. And haha, that was going to be the end of it. So the mom answers, and it's a very weird call. Like the first time you listen to it, it sounds so weird. And funny enough, this was not even a Friday night. This was just like a random live stream that some girl asked if I could do a favor for her. And I was like, sure. So it was like her ex-boyfriend, and she's like, he broke up with me, so call him as Brendan. It would be so funny to be like, haha, I gotcha. So the mom was like, James, where are you? And then it clicks in my head that she thinks I'm James. Then just I end up telling her that I'm in the woods and I got high and I'm naked later on in the call, and she's like screaming and losing her mind. So then her sister gets on the phone, or daughter, James's sister, and then I pretend I don't know what the hell's going on, and then I just kind of hang up.
Well,
didn't say it was a joke.
And I know you've gone in detail with this in your book. This guy actually went to your high school.
Yeah.
So if I have the story correct, people actually, were giving him a hard time, saying, "Hey, James, I called your mom. I told her you're missing," like that kind of thing.
Yeah. Man. He was getting picked on, and I felt bad, but I had no idea he went to the school. I honestly didn't even look at the area code, and I should have, because for a while, we had a rule to not call 631 or 516 area code numbers because those were New York numbers, and we didn't want to prank anybody near us. We just didn't want to mess with anybody near us. And I kind of broke that rule. Again, I was doing a favor. And I didn't find out till a few weeks later when the girl was like the girl came up to me in school, and she was like, "Thanks for doing that," because it was kind of over the summer. It was maybe like July or August, so it was like summer break. So I go into school. I'm now like a senior in high school, and she's like, "Hey, it's me. Thank you so much for doing that for me." And I'm like, "Ah, shit." And she's like, a few, and I knew it was going to be a big video because at the time we were only getting a few hundred views a week on our videos. This one, we got 3,000 views in a day. So I was like, oh, this one's going to be big. And YouTube didn't feature it till maybe a few months later. But so the kids in our school, and I would hear people in the hallway, like I'd see him and he'd be walking, people would be like, "James, your mom's looking for you." And I felt bad. And he would not come near me. He was actually friends with Joe and was like, "Your cousin better not come near me." He understood Joe was not there when it happened. Joe does not decide what calls are done. He just makes the list. I did this as a favor for somebody. Joe had nothing to do with it. Whatever. They were friends for a while. It was like he's even cool with Kristen. He's just because they were not there, but he does not like me, and that's fine. So the full story, why this even happened to begin with, because I didn't find this out for years. I would get bits and pieces of the story for years. So I'll just tell you the full story. James was out with his friends. They were all going to his friend's house, and he didn't have a cell phone because he got it taken away. So, which probably doesn't make sense now. Why would you send somebody out without a cell phone? But back then that was pretty normal. If you're grounded, you get your phone taken away. Exactly. You go back to your life without a phone if something happened to you, whatever. So he was supposed to be at a friend's house, and he was going to call the mom at a certain time to check in. He did not, because he left. All the friends left and went to the beach. So minutes before this call happens, the mom's calling all of the friends. Nobody's answering. She calls the house that they're supposed to be at, and the mom answers and says, "Oh no, all the kids left. They went to the beach or something. I don't even know where they went." He went out with the Ruby and Paige. They were mentioned in the call. So he's not here. So the mom's like, "Well, have him call me." So as soon as she hangs up the phone was when I called. So it was a very weird chain of events where the mom is expecting a call from James, is pissed, and now gets a phone call. Then I found out years later, James used to prank call people trying to sound like a girl, selling Girl Scout cookies, and prank called his mom trying to sound like a girl, which also kind of sounds like Brandon, the Brandon character. So "Hi, is James there?" could also be a girl selling Girl Scout cookies, which he again, we found out bits and pieces of the story over a course of years from like people very close to him, including his mom when she yelled at me in person. So,
Oh yeah,
so
you
this
did write
call
about that in your
happens.
book.
Yeah. So he gets home, like he gets to the house, and then they were like, "Oh, your mom was looking for you." So he comes home thinking like, "All right, I'm going to get yelled at for going to the beach and for not checking in." And the mom allegedly beats the hell out of him. Like,
Oh no.
just like screaming at him, smacking him, flipping the hell out. And James goes into his room and is like, what the heck's then the girl who set him up sent him a link to the YouTube video because it was already on YouTube by the time he got home, because I was like, we need to get this up like right now. And was like, because she messaged him like, hey, how's your night going? He's like, my mom just screamed at me. I don't know what's going on. She's like, maybe this is why. So now he's watching this call, shows his mom. And I mean, he wasn't in trouble anymore, I guess, and got his phone back for whatever he did. So then, finds out that I go to his school and it's starting to go viral. It's now like one of like the most watched prank call videos in all of existence. And then his mom also worked at the school, so I had to.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, did teachers and principals know about this? Like
yeah.
not the call, but like just what you did in general, prank calls.
Yeah, because I would originally like hang up flyers and stuff for Friday Night Cranks, like little flyers, like tune in tonight. And a lot of teachers were like, you can't be doing that. And then some teachers were like, yeah, just put it on my little, whiteboard. So some teachers were cool with it. And the principal knew of it, but the superintendent at the time was like the coolest dude ever. Because some people, I know who they were, but I don't feel like getting into who they were, tried to write letters to the superintendent to stop me from graduating because of the prank calls. So then he went home because Friday Night Cranks was blocked through the school system. Like you couldn't go to the website or through YouTube. So he went home and watched the videos and called me into his office and was like laughing his ass off. He's like, this is the funniest thing. I'm going to show my kids. Then like a week later, he calls me into his office. He's like, my daughter's like your biggest fan. She loves it. So I like brought him some hats and shirts. I was like, here you go. And like
extra credit.
Yeah. We had a lot of cops that watched the show too, in New York, and I guess all over. In between police calls, they'd watch Friday Night Cranks, and some cops would watch a call. Then somebody would hang up and call the police, and they'd get the call that they just watched, and they said they would just hang up. And a few cops have told me that to my face. They're like, "Yeah, when you did that one call, blah blah, she called 911 to report you harassing her," and like I answered the call and was like, yeah, we'll look into it, and just kind of like I'm like, oh man.
I think you've gotten this question a lot, like how did you not get in trouble? And I guess the answer is you never did anything too extreme. It's funny because there are a lot of people that do or I don't know if they still do prank calls online like you did for such a long time. There was one guy, and I'll refrain from saying the details of his name or what he did, and you already know what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
This guy would call, hotel rooms, restaurants, and would say, hey, there's an invisible gas leak, something.
Yeah.
We need you to break all the windows and take off your clothes. And it's just, eventually he got in trouble, but it's like.
And before he would hang up, he would say that he was me.
He would claim he was you.
Yeah. And I'm sure I remember because you were tweeting me about this. I don't know if you remember. There was a live stream when we did Friday Night Cranks that ended. They actually hacked our live stream and told everybody like, hey, come watch our show. Like, hey, this is Jared, come watch our live stream. And I had no idea till everybody was tweeting me like, oh, these guys are a little crazy. Like, why did you say to watch them? And I'm like, I didn't. And maybe you DM'd me or somebody. They're like, no, on the stream you came on and said like, go watch these people. And I'm like, that was not me. And I was like, oh no. So they would say like, I'm Jared from Friday Night Cranks. And cops actually did show up at my parents' house looking for me. And the FBI ended up getting involved because they were not from America and turned to all big thing. They caused like $400,000 worth of damage in a month to different hotels.
There are news reports about that too.
Yeah.
Well, what's crazy is there was like a live webcam. I don't know where this is, but he convinced an elderly guy that he was going to film a commercial, and that, for doing the commercial, he would get an iPad, which I don't know how desperate you have to be for this, but
Right.
he actually went to the coffee shop where the webcam is facing, and he said, "Hey, yeah, that's the car right there. Break the window. That's the commercial." And he was actually hitting the window. Have you ever seen this?
No.
Oh, yeah. He actually, basically, he was attempting to break it, and the owner walked out and got all upset.
Yeah.
It was insane. They actually showed the aftermath where they found out they were using the webcam as a recording prop, and the owner of the shop just flipped off the camera and was pretty upset about it. So,
yeah, I believe they also convinced somebody to like drive their car through a KFC.
Oh,
they did like the gas leak, and all the people in the store thought like there's a huge gas leak, and they said like if you break the windows, like the gas leak will come in, it'll be fine. So the girl was like, should I just drive my car through? And they're like, yeah. And like she did. And like they were telling, so they would actually wait till the cops got on the phone and then tell the cops that it was me. And just like, oh, it's just a prank call. It's Friday Night Crank. So the cops, not knowing any better, of course, would go to the website and be like, there's the dude. Like, that's Jared. Friday Night Cranks. It's Friday night. Hell, we got him. And then I finally said, like, I have all of the shows. So I'm going to send you all of the live shows in the past like 6 months. So you'll see all of the calls we did. I'll send you like my call history from Skype. Like, we didn't do any of these calls. And then they left me alone after that, after I sent all of that over. And then I had to reach out to them again when I found who the dude was. I'm like, oh, this is him. Here you go. And they were like, oh, okay.
Did you ever interact with that guy personally, like asking why he did that? Or
no, I don't know if it was him. There were a lot of people in like his little squad of prank people. There's maybe like 8 or 9 different people. A few of them would reach out to me over the years, like, hey, would you want to come in and like do some pranks? I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, well, you suck. I'm like, okay, well, easy. I just didn't like what they were doing. So then I guess they decided like, oh, we'll mess with him. This will be funny. We'll like ruin his life. And it obviously backfired, which is good. Yeah, it is pretty crazy. There was like a whole, I think there was a website, I don't know if it's still around, to look it up. It's called like The Smoking Gun. So if you look up that channel name and then The Smoking Gun, there's like a whole article about how they found him.
Oh, okay. I think I have seen that.
And it's pretty crazy. Like they were, there we go. Yeah, I'll send you the link. They were tracking down like his like PayPal account, or like they contacted somebody that sent him money, and like they were able to like figure out where he was, and he was like in his mom's house, somewhere like in Canada, and like they got him.
Oh man,
it's like so weird.
A couple other things I did want to ask you. So you incorporated this phrase 12-6 cloud into your calls, which am I allowed to say what it means? Because you did you had like a little event where you actually got to interact with some of your fans. Someone actually asked you that, and someone else filmed the answer. What do you want to say about that? I guess that's yours to answer, not for me. But I think a lot of people should know.
Okay, I honestly don't remember what I said. So what did I say?
You guys were recapping how you called a pizza place, and you would use the phrase 12-6 cloud, and you guys joked about how cloud was a bleach at one point, and then in the end you just said it means absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that is correct. So it got like very out of hand, because it was something we would tell people to like say stuff in the chat that we should say on the call. Somebody was like, just ask them like what 12-6 is. So we're like, okay. So we did. And there were a few calls where we would wait till the person was like really pissed at us, and we would just ask randomly. And this one guy, like one of the earliest times, I called a guy asking if he wanted to subscribe to a magazine. And I said that you get one magazine a week for a year. So that's 52 weeks. And I said it so I wasn't thinking, but he got very offended by that and thought like I thought he was stupid. He's like, I can count, dropping F-bombs. I think he said the N-word at one point. Like, it got very out of hand. So then I randomly just asked him like 12-6, and he's like, 12 minus 6 is what? What are you even talking about? I'm like, 12 minus 6 is like, it's 6. I'm like, all right, so you can count. And then he like lost his mind. So that was kind of like one of the first times. And then the cloud, I don't know how that got in there, but the whole thing, it just, we're building on it. Like, all right, we can confuse people saying 12 minus 6, and then we'll say 12 minus 6 cloud. And then we'll say 12 minus 6 cloud, yes or no. And now make it a yes or no question, which makes less sense. So then people were trying to figure out what it meant. So then if you go to like, if you Google it, there's like a Yahoo Answers of like this in-depth thing of what people thought it meant. And then somebody made a website,
I remember those,
like 12 minus 6 cloud, where it was like a message board where people would put what they thought it meant, and just got so out of hand. I'm like, now we can't say it means nothing because people put way too much time into this. And it's so funny because now we're kind of pranking everybody who's watching the show. And I mean, 12 minus 6 cloud, it doesn't mean anything. So the fact that people think it means something is kind of funny. So,
you know, what's funny?
Keep it going.
You called, someone sent in a request to call their friend who was trying to apply for Cornell University, and you were claiming to be the dean. And then you said, okay, the math is very important here. We need you to do a math equation for us over the phone. And you just said 12 minus 6 cloud. And she goes, I'm guessing cloud is my variable. And I just burst out laughing when she said that. And she actually got it right. She actually did say my answer is nothing. So yeah, you did get that right. You know what's funny? And oh shit, what was I gonna say? Damn it. Oh man, I just lost my train of thought. What were you just telling me a minute ago?
Oh, my 6 cloud, the message board, people posting Yahoo Answers.
So I am a huge Final Fantasy fan, and the main character of, have you ever played Final Fantasy?
Very briefly.
Okay.
But there's a character cloud, yeah.
Yeah, the main character of Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII is like the biggest Final Fantasy of the franchise. Yeah. And the main character's name is Cloud. Like, they have made a remake of this game. They even have a movie sequel to it. So it's a pretty big deal. And the main character's name is Cloud. People thought 12 minus 6 Cloud was in relation to Cloud from Final Fantasy VII, which I thought was just great as a big fan of the series.
That's funny. Yeah.
Oh, man. So, man, you got to come back and we got to do this some other. I was going to ask you some other things not related to Friday Night Cranks, but unfortunately, the whole thing ended up being just about FNC. Right. What was your like biggest takeaway doing that whole show?
I mean, I think the biggest takeaway was like, one, it was cool to see how like you can actually build an audience online from like nothing, and just slowly build it up over years, and just how live streaming, it's like finally catching on over the past few years, but for years it was like this thing that no one really knew about or knew how to do, and is like watching that become more accessible, and then just seeing like technology improve is cool, and then just also just the comedy aspect of it, of how you could just be sitting in a basement talking to a webcam and have a few people over the phone and then just like entertain, like hundreds of thousands of people, is like terrifying, but like also kind of cool. Because for years we were just looking at numbers like, oh, this, we had 100 people watching, and then for a while we were having 25, 30,000 concurrent viewers watching Friday Night Cranks like at once when we were live, which is like Madison Square Garden type of like shows. So that was weird, just seeing like, oh, if we got all these people in the same room, it would be crazy. And then just seeing kind of how we talked about earlier, how it's still impressive numbers now, but nowadays, like, that's pretty normal. So just to see how many more people have been embracing YouTube and streaming and content in general online, like just how many billions of people are just consuming stuff. Back in the day was a big deal when we had people watching from like the UK or New Zealand and it was live. But now that's like pretty normal for people to have audiences like outside of America. But at the time we're like, you mean people watch us from Japan? Like, that's weird. People are staying up to 4 a.m. in the UK to watch us. I don't get that, but people thought it was funny.
Well, people, when I mentioned, during quarantine, I went back and watched all these. I'm going to probably watch some of them later too, just from talking to you. But people in the comment section said, "Hey, it's 2017 and this is still funny. 2018, 2019, 2020." Yeah. Like people are pretty crazy about it in the comments, which is cool to see.
Yeah, and I think.
Go ahead.
And I think I guess another takeaway is like, in a nice way. Like I love the fact that we've had so many people watch and so many people, especially like you, that have sent in like so many like ideas that have just been like knocked out of the park.
The Professor Oak one was my favorite.
Yeah. And then like calling Barbara and yeah, just all of that stuff was just so funny. But how a majority of the audience would always be like a year or two behind in terms of like the calls. So when we first started posting, a majority of the comments were like, "Wow, you guys suck. Like, this is not funny." A video of ours got uploaded to eBomb's World, and we got ripped apart, like thousands of comments.
I remember that
like,
website.
It was horrible. I felt so bad about myself for like weeks. And then Kristen was like, "How'd the video do?" I'm like, "Oh, it's doing great." And she's like, "Can I see?" Like, "No, like don't leave," because I think she had a computer, but she didn't really know how to spell like eBomb's World. She was 10 and just didn't really understand how to find stuff at the time. So like now, so then a year or two into the show, we would get comments like, "Oh, your calls were so much funnier when you first started." And like, okay. And then years later, people would be like, "Oh, I wish you did more old school calls, like, like you did back in like 2009. And I'm like, "What?" And then the first show we had Stu on, everybody seemed to hate him. Everybody was like, "Who is this guy? He's not funny." Maybe it was just a rough night for him. He's not funny. And we like loved him. So we were like, we're going to keep having him on. And then years later, people were like, as those calls are being posted, like, "The show was so much funnier without Stu. This is ridiculous." And now then there was like a while where he didn't do the show, just like a few weeks, and people were like, "You need to go back doing the old school videos to when Stu was doing." I'm like, "You guys are never happy with like what's going on." So now when we were ending the show, everybody was like, the calls were so much funnier. And now people are like, "Bring the show back. This was funny." I'm like, "What the hell are you guys talking about?" And even when we did the Hidden Camera series, people hated it when we started doing. They're like, "Just stick to prank calls. These aren't funny." And now all the comments are like, "This is amazing." I'm like, well, that would have been great to hear when we were pitching to Comedy Central to do a whole show based around Hidden Camera pranks. And all the comments were like, "This sucks."
Oh man, that's insane.
Yeah, they wanted to do it. They just wanted to fake it, which is no, thank you. But it's just so funny how everyone seems to be like a year or two behind. And even with the late night web show, like it was a very rough, I mean, we could talk about that now, next time, another time, whenever. Very rough start for a lot of reasons. But everybody was like, "Oh, this sucks." But the comments now were like, "This show's kind of funny. I wish he was still doing this." I'm like, "But where was that energy?" And then like,
I think, let me just say this, like, I thought it was funny. Not as funny as Friday Night Cranks, I'll be honest. I think it's just so hard watching people who loved what you did before watch you stop doing that and then do something else. I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. And I think, and a lot of it was like, one, I wanted to show how much technology has improved. And then also like what we could do with live streaming that like nobody's doing. Like all of our cameras were wireless. Like we had like a pretty sick studio set up. Like we had a whole set built. We had like a whole tech room with like all this stuff. We had just a lot of stuff. And to pull it off live was maybe not the best idea. I think it would have worked a lot better as like pre-recorded segments mixed in with like live. But yeah, a lot of the comments on it now is somebody like, "This show's actually kind of funny." So then I'll search their username and they have another comment from like 2 years ago, like, "Oh, this sucks." I'm like, "But dude, no." Like, I get you thought it sucked, but maybe you came around. But like, God, but for a while it was just trying to find a balance between creative tech and live streaming that was exciting. And that was very exciting to me for a while. And then that was not. And that's like a whole nother book, is the late night web show venue that I owned for 2 years. That's a whole other ball of disaster, but also funny and weirdness. But But really, it wasn't until recently like I would get excited about certain ideas, like, oh, like I could upload videos of me reacting to old Friday Night Cranks videos. That would be funny. Then I have like this other idea, like, oh, I could also do this. I could also do that. And then finally, like it just clicked literally last night. I like woke my wife up at like 1 a.m. and was like, hey, so like, here's this idea. It's like all of these ideas. And I just like blurted it out. And she's like, that's awesome. I'm like, I know. So like all day, I've just been like plotting out ideas. And it, like I said, it is Friday Night Cranks related, but it's, we'll just have to see what it turns into. But it's like very exciting. Right. And like, for the first time, I'm like, this is going to be fun to do like a live show. And like,
I don't know if you can answer this, but can you say approximately when we can expect that?
I don't know.
TBD.
Yeah, TBD. It's still very early, like fleshing out ideas. But if you enjoyed the tech aspect of the late night web show and thought like some of it was okay, but loved Friday Night Cranks, it's going to be like not a mesh, but just like it's going to be something. But I actually was Googling today different channels, like different prank channels and different live streams, just to see if anybody's doing anything remotely similar. And there's not. I think the prank community has kind of died down, sadly. But it should be pretty interesting to see what happens. Because I've had a lot of ideas over the years, especially with like in-camera ideas and other stuff where I was like, oh, I wish we did that, where I may not be doing it, but it'll just be like a pretty interesting concept.
Awesome.
And I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it, especially people who watch Friday Night Cranks videos, and then people who have never heard of Friday Night Cranks would see what's going on and be like, oh, this is kind of cool, hopefully. Or they might be like, this sucks, but whatever. Seems like that's always what I read.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. And yeah, well, you'll have to come back again sometime, man. This is a lot of fun, man. It's always a good time talking to you. So we'll do this again. Before you go, what social media do you have? I know you got your podcast. How can people listen to your podcast? How can people interact with you or follow you on social media?
Yeah, so I guess the best way to find me would be at McMullin Jared on Twitter, or just Google Jared Friday Night Cranks. That's probably easier than trying to spell McMullin. And then I'm at Jared J. McMullin on Instagram. I guess just follow me anywhere on social media. I have a podcast called the Jared McMullin Podcast. That'll be changing up as well to go with like this new kind of concept. So just follow me somewhere, because I hope to God sometime in 2021. I can't, like, I went from not wanting to do any live streaming to like, I hope to God we could pull this off in 2021. So I'm getting very excited about it. So we'll see. So just follow me, because it's going to be one of those things where it's just going to be announced and we're just going to try it and see what happens.
Right. Sounds good, man. Jared McMullin, crazy guy all around, formerly with Friday Night Cranks and Late Night Web Show. Jared, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thank you. This was fun.
All right. Take care, man.
All right. Thanks.